Thank you very much for coming, and welcome to this workshop about upgrading 6.2 projects to Liferay DXP. I shared the URL in Twitter, but just in case you didn't see the tweet, you can get the slides I will be using in today's workshop in this URL. Okay, so I think it's just in case you don't see the content properly from the back, or you want to go through the webinar back at home, I recommend you to download the slides from here. Okay. Well, so let's start with the goals of this workshop. Okay. So as Bruno said, my name is Eduardo García, and I work as a software engineer in Liferay. And before I worked in Liferay, I was, like many of you, simply a Liferay user. Okay, I worked for a company who used Liferay as a product. So, and I understand perfectly the challenge of upgrading. So that's why I proposed this workshop, because I think it's very, very important that you guys feel comfortable with the upgrading process. And well, currently I'm working as part of the web experience group in Liferay, the teams that brings you web content and all those cool components, and also audience targeting. So, well, the goals of this workshop is, well, the main goal is to save time. And when I say save time, I also mean save money. Okay, so upgrading from a previous version to the new one in terms of projects can be tricky, and I want to save you a lot of time by showing you how to use the right tools, the right environments, and show you the typical problems that you may face during the process. Okay. So we also want to advise, not to coerce. I mean, I want to show you all the migration options that Liferay provides, and allow you to judge by yourself which approach is better in your case. Okay. As for the strategy for this workshop, we will focus on strategies and best practices. The workshop is targeted to developers, but I think it's also very useful for higher level positions like product managers, so that they get an idea of what involves migrating from old or from legacy Liferay projects to new modular projects. Okay, and it's also based on it's a learn by example workshop. We will learn how to install and use the tools, and we will also face a realistic migration use case. With this said, this is the tentative planning for today's session. Okay, I know we have a break in between, so I've tried to adjust this as much as possible. The original workshop, just for your information, was 2 hours and a half long. So this has been reduced because the DEVCON agenda is very tight. So I'll try to compact everything in this 1 hour and 40 minutes. So we will go through an introduction, and then we will start with the exercises. Then, as I said, we have the break. The break was scheduled for 15:10 to 15:40, but I ask you all to try to reduce this break to just, instead of doing a 30 minutes break, let's try to do a 20 minutes break. Okay, so we get 10 minutes from the break just to cover all the contents of the workshop. Okay. I will compensate later with beer or something. So, okay, about the materials. I assume that all of you got an email with the materials, with the link to the materials and the instructions. If you didn't, Bruno is going to pass the USBs with all the materials, and also the USB contains also the instructions on how to install the environments and the sample code. And well, just a very quick checklist about the environment for those of you who managed to install it. If you managed to do it, then you should have Liferay Developer Studio installed. The Liferay DXP server embedded in this Liferay Developer Studio should be available. Liferay 7 SDK should be installed and connected to this embedded server. And the sample application Jukebox project should have been imported into Liferay Developer Studio. May I ask how many of you managed to get to this point? Oh, cool. Well, that's the good thing of being in a developer conference. That last time only one managed to get this far because they didn't, of course, in the context of a conference where you all want to attend as many sessions as possible, it's hard to find a time to set up the environment. So I really appreciate that you made the effort. For all of you who didn't reach this point, just a suggestion. So do not install the environment during the workshop. We only have, as I said, 1 hour and 40 minutes, which is really, really short time to cover such a complex topic as upgrading. So I really recommend all of you to pay attention to the workshop, is to understand the guidelines, understand the steps, and then with more time when you go back home, try to repeat everything. I promise I won't disappear after this event. You can reach me, and I can solve any questions you have about this workshop or the upgrading process in general. Okay. Okay, let's start with the introduction and start understanding what have changed from Liferay 6.2 to DXP. Okay. So what's changed? Well, APIs and portlets, as you probably know, has been extracted as OCI modules. Okay, we've been talking about this during the last DEVCON and this DEVCON, so I'm sure you're all aware of this. We've also adopted modern OCI standards for programming, which is a change with respect to how things used to be in Liferay. And now all core APIs are provided by Portal kernel. If you have been working with previous Liferay version, you remember that in some cases you used Portal service, some other APIs were in util or in Portal Impulse. So now all core APIs are provided by the same library. The dependency management has been improved using semantic versioning, and we also use annotation instead of XMLs and property files. And we also provide new extension mechanisms. Okay, this is probably one of the most important changes. So basically, if you've been working with previous versions, this is what we had. Okay, we had a very big core, a very large platform where you could build cool apps on top of. Okay, and what we have done these last 2 years has been reducing this core to its minimal expression and add more layers. So now you can leave the core as reduced as you want and decide whether you want to install. Well, they are installed by default, but you could, for instance, uninstall a dynamic data list or calendar or even web content if you don't really need it. Okay, that's one of the advantages of the modularization. But not everything has changed. Okay, so what hasn't changed? We still respect the three-layer architecture: the presentation, service, and persistence. We support previously supported standards, and also we still provide mechanisms to deploy legacy applications like hooks or portlets. Most APIs remain functionally similar, even if you will find the functions in different packages. The methods and the function is still the same, so you won't find many difference on this. The scaffolding tools work as in 6.2. I mean, the service builder, for instance, is practically the same, and we still recommend, but we don't coerce, the use of Liferay IDE and Liferay Developer Studio as development tools, and we still provide plugins SDK for legacy plugins and transitioning. Okay, so what's the benefit of a migration to DXP for developers? So honestly, because I've been working outside and inside Liferay, once you pass through this process of upgrading, the experience for a developer really improves. Okay, basically, developing for Liferay is now simpler and linear. We now use a modular development paradigm, which is much more practical when you work on teams, because every team is focused on a different on a part of the product. We enhance reusability. The modules are more extensible and easier to maintain. We optimize for your tooling choice. I mean, we provide new embedded templates to create applications in Liferay, and we also provide powerful configurability. We will see examples of these benefits during the workshop. Now, getting to the main topic of this workshop. Okay, we've seen what changed, but how do we get from 6.2 to a VXP project? Okay. Okay, so a migration process consists of 2 general steps. Okay, the first step is to adapt our existing traditional plugin to the Liferay 7 or Liferay DXP API. Okay, so basically the goal of this step is to get our project or our application deployed on our Liferay DXP server with the minimum changes. Okay, and the second step, as we will see later, is optional. Consists on converting the traditional plugins into OCI modules. Okay. Basically, this is how the process looks. Okay. So we start from here. We have our 6.2 API and our 6.2 SDK, and we have our plugin application. Then we go through the first step, which is adapting. Okay. And as a result, we have a compatible plugin working on top of the Liferay 7 API and Liferay 7 SDK. And the next step consists on conversion. So we convert our monolithic app into a modular app, and we also declare our services as components. So before we even face the upgrade, I would like to review some best practices. Some of them are very obvious. So sorry if they are. So, but I think it's very important that we remember them. So the first advice is have your tests ready. Okay, you are going to change a lot of code, so you have to make sure that it will work, that you have the means to know if anything got broken during the process. So I would recommend to have a test that you can use to validate every stage of your upgrade. For instance, you can have a functional test to check if your app UI works well after you migrate it to Liferay 7. We recommend to save your working code and environment. Do not upgrade your existing development environment. Install a new one, a separate one, and in the case of a code, create a branch for the migration. Okay, so do not perform changes on the working branch. Create a separate so that you can keep working on your with CISO changes and start working on the migration. I also recommend to preserve your project history. I mean, try to reflect every change you perform in GitHub, and if you have to move things, try to move instead of delete, so that it's reflected on the history. And also adopt a rock climbing strategy. So try to do things on planned steps and as small as possible, so that you can check if everything went well before you move to the next step. Regarding the tools, we have no mandatory tools. We will review this during the workshop, but we have some recommendations. Okay, we recommend Liferay Developer Studio to solve the conflicts with the API. This will go the breaking changes, and as an alternative, we recommend also blade templates for the creation of the modules. Okay, in case you don't want to use Liferay Developer Studio plugins to add the modules in the second stage of the upgrade process, you can use blade templates from a command line. And finally, before we start the exercises, I wanted to introduce the Jukebox project. I don't know how many of you attended the DEVCON, like I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Well, when we released Liferay 6.2, we added a lot of new frameworks, like the Recycle Bin framework, or we extended the staging framework, and we wanted to provide a full sample, a realistic app that consumed all those frameworks. Okay, so that's why we created the Jukebox port. Okay, and as I said, it consumes a lot of the most common APIs, and it's available in this URL, and is a 6.2 plugin. So we said, okay, let's do the effort that our users and customers had to do. So let's migrate this plugin and see what happens, and then we explain you the results. So that's what we're going to do. We take we eat our own food. We take a plugin that we created on 6.2 and we migrated it to 7. This is how the Jukebox Project looks like. It's basically an app to manage artists, albums, and songs in Liferay. And as said, we will. This is what we are going to do during the workshop. We will migrate this project. We'll be focusing mainly on the tooling, the strategies, and the best practices, and not, especially today in this case, so much in the code itself, because we are very limited in time, and the code changes a lot from one project to other. So I will try to show you the process more than this specific code itself. Okay, and you can find the whole process of migration in this repository. Okay, so you will find all the commits between the current status, the Liferay 6.2 plugin and the Liferay 7 modular application. Okay, so now we're ready to start with the first step of our journey from Liferay 6.2 to 7, which consists on adapting the Jukebox Portlet to DXP. So, I will go a bit fast with the instructions because, as I said, I don't think we have the time to do all the exercises. But I guess you also have this in the list, in the instruction list and in the slides I shared. But basically, the first step will consist on taking our existing Liferay 6.2 plugin project and imported it into the Liferay Developer Studio. Okay, with this, you should have something like this. Okay, you will find your legacy plugin project as a project in the Liferay Developer Studio. Okay, you probably recognize the structure of the plugin project. So, well, the process of loading is quite simple. In case you didn't follow the instructions, I will repeat it again. It's basically you import a Liferay plugins SDK project, okay, and then, as I said, as a result, you have it in your project tree. So now we have to, this adapting step consists on basically 3 subtasks, okay? So first, we can find class that have been moved to a package within the same class path, okay? So in this case, we only have to fix the imports, okay? We may have we may have classes that have been moved to modules that are not in the class path. Okay, in this case, we have to not only fix the imports but also resolve the dependencies. And we may, and the third, but in the worst scenarios, some classes have been replaced or removed. In this case, we have to change the API. Okay, that's what we call a breaking change. Okay. There are examples for this. Okay, as I said, the first case is the portal kernel. It's in the class path, okay, but we may have moved some classes from one package to other inside the portal kernel. So it's just a matter of fixing this import in your code. The second case can be, for instance, web content. If you're in your application, you are consuming any journal class, then you have to add a dependency to this module and then fix the imports, okay? And in this case, as I said, this is the worst case, you will have to find which API replaces the one that's been removed, okay? So, well, this describes the current situation, okay? We used to have this, which was very practical, okay? We have everything. We could use any library application. Now, we reduce the core to just the kernel classes, which includes the user, groups, and roles. But for all other applications, like the web content, blocks, and since they are now modules, we have to manage those dependencies, okay? There are many ways to solve these dependencies. Of course, these modules, apart from having running on Liferay, the libraries have been published to our Maven repository, so you can find them. and consuming from here. As I said, there are many ways to do this. You can use ABI, Gradle, or Maven to get those libraries and solve your compile dependencies. There are more information. This is important. During the whole workshop, I will show some links to the official documentation. Okay, this is a workshop and this is an example, but I want you to have the reference to the official documentation, so you can have it as a reference. You can find the links in the slide that I shared. Okay, so fixing the imports is quite simple in any IDE. Okay, for instance, Eclipse provide tools to fix the imports. If the classes are in the class path, then you can simply use the fixing imports tool that your IDE provides, and automatically all your imports will be changed to the closest class that is found. In some cases, if you try this, you will find some conflicts, and you have to manually fix them. Okay. But what happens with the last case, with the worst case? What happens if the API has changed? So why did we change the API to start with? Okay, so in some cases the functionality was replaced or removed. We have to change some Java or JavaScript APIs, and in some cases some of the methods or classes that were annotated as deprecated in 6.2 has been removed in 7, okay? So just to find a complete list of these cases, you have a document which we call the breaking changes list, where you have not only the list of changes, but also the suggestion to solve this issue, okay? Basically, what you can find in this document is this. So the title describing the change, the Jira ticket, where the goal of this change is described, and then the answer to this question. So what changed, who's affected, how should I update my code, and why we changed this, okay? So I won't go through the whole list today, but I recommend you to have a view to it, because depending on what you use from our API, your breaking changes will be different, okay? So you have to go through it and see if any of these changes affects your code, and what changes you have to perform to fix that, okay? As I said, it's optionally, if you don't want to use this breaking changes list, we provide a tool integrated in Liferay Developer Studio, which is the code upgrade tool, okay? This tool automatically identifies the areas in your code that needs to be changed based on this document, on the breaking changes document. So if you have the code installed, this project, okay, you will find under if you right-click on the project and you select the Liferay option, you will see this Find Liferay 7 Breaking API Changes. Okay, this is this upgrade wizard tool. Okay, so what you get if you click on that is basically a list with all the issues you have in your project. In terms of breaking changes, I mean APIs that no longer exist, and you will see also help about how to fix it. Okay, what the steps are to fix this. So as I said, basically when the process is you upload your existing plugin project, update the imports of whatever you have in the class path, add the dependencies to what is missing in the class path, and finally fix any API which has been changed from 6.2 to 7. There are some extra considerations that you should take into account. So the DTDs you've been using in your projects are probably out of date, so you should change them to 7, so you have access to the new fields in all the XML files. You should also, only in case you consume resources inside the application, you should upgrade your URLs. And it's also important, in order to regenerate the service builder classes with the right implementations, then you have to rebuild the service builder, okay? So now the materials you've been provided with contains 4 stages, the 4 steps we're going through in today's workshop. The number 0 was the original plugin, the 6.2 plugin. If you repeat the same process of importing with as you did with the original plugin, but in this time you use the first step, the migration, you will get the result of going through this process. I mean, you will get in your developer studio or in whatever tool you use a version of the Jukebox Portlet that has been adapted to 7. We've replaced the imports, we've fixed the API breaking changes, and we declare the dependencies of our project with other modules which are not in the portal in the core class path. Okay. So, well, I will show you later how to. I will deploy it later for you guys. But well, if you try these from the source provided, please remove first the IBI XML MD5 because it's included there. It's only necessary for the first deployment. This is important in case you haven't used the Liferay Developer Studio and the SDK before this example. If you don't remove these, all the dependencies won't be downloaded automatically because it's assumed that you already downloaded them. Okay, so if you remove this and you follow these instructions, basically you deploy this project on the server. The first step will be to download all the dependencies, and there are quite a few before the plugin is deployed. I tell you this because it may take like 2 minutes, depending on your bandwidth, before you all the dependencies are downloaded. But this happens only the first time, okay? And once you can check the log just to see if everything went okay. If it did, let me show you here in the. So one way, there's not necessarily the only one, to add your module here is to click on, this is the embedded library server, which is included in Liferay Developer Studio, okay? So if you click here and add and remove, well, you will have it here in available. You just click add and finish, and it will be deployed into your server, okay? You can, as alternative, you can use the SDK tools, I mean the and deploy tools which you are familiar with, okay? As I said, Liferay Developer Studio is completely optional. And the result is that you will find the, oh, I think the session is back. Yeah, you will find your, the Jukebox Portlet listed in the app list, okay? So, well, these 3 have been used. This is the song one. So you should be able to drop them to create new artist songs, okay? So, as I said, if you don't have the environment ready, but I recommend you to do this at home and do this check. That's why we divided this workshop into the steps, just to perform a validation of every step. Okay, so what's happening? We haven't done anything with OCI, and still our plugin, okay, we adapted it, but it's working on 7. What's the magic behind this? Wasn't Liferay only for OCI modules? Okay, this is the trick. What we are still building is a WAR file, but automatically when we deploy it into Liferay, it is transformed into a WAP file, okay, which is basically a WAR file with a manifest. This, as I said, it takes place in deployment time, and after this point, the OCI Web Standard module, which is a module running in our OCI containers, will get this WAP file and deploy it into Liferay. If you're curious about where your module is after deployment, you will find it here, okay? This is your Liferay bundle. Then you should find a OCI folder, and inside it, there's a WAR folder. That's where these legacy WAR projects adapted to 7 are deployed. There's again, just for you to understand this process, this was the old deployment process in Liferay 6.2. Basically, we have this Word file, we run undeploy, it copied automatically into the deploy folder, and then it was deployed in the server. Now it looks like this. So again, we deploy with undeploy or Liferay Developer Studio deploy tools into the deploy folder, but all these things happens behind the scenes. So the Word is converted into a web file by adding a manifest, and then the web extender captures it and deploys it as an application. This is a summary of the steps we've gone through so far. Okay, like a cheat list. Okay, so basically, in order to adapt Liferay 6.2 plugin project to work in Liferay 7 or Liferay DXP, then you have to go through these steps. So first, you load your existing project in a Liferay 7 development environment. Second, you have to manage the build-time dependencies. I mean, in case you have some, you're using some Liferay classes that are no longer in the core, like journal or wiki, you have to solve that. Then you fix imports, you upgrade the API. An option is to use this cool tool I showed you in Liferay Developer Studio, but if not, simply go through the breaking changes document, which is available online, and detect what changes may be affecting your application. Don't forget the XML DTDs, the URLs, and rebuilding your services in case you're using Service Builder. And finally, you should be ready to deploy. Check the log in case you see any errors, and run your tests. Remember, we should have, before this upgrade, some tests ready to detect if we broke anything during this process. Okay, this is very, very important. I leave you here. You have the slides, I hope. Some references to the materials I used to create this first part of the workshop. Okay, so it's not. I haven't used anything that you cannot find in Liferay documentation site. Okay, so I really recommend you to go through these documents in case you want to learn more or find more details about the steps I just described. Okay, I really recommend. So this one, in case you're a bit lost with, okay, where did my class go? So this is a link to the API and which module you can find it. Okay, so this is very, very useful because even we work in Liferay sometimes say, okay, where did this class go? Okay, so okay, so this will be the end of this first step. Okay, so as I said, so far we haven't done anything, any OSGI thing. Okay, we just okay, added our plugin to a Liferay 7 development environment, perform some changes, and it magically run. So why should then go through a second step? Okay, why do we need this conversion step I mentioned in the introduction? Okay, this conversion, converting your plugin project into a modular application has some benefits. So one of the main benefits is individual module release. If you split your app into smaller modules, you can release new versions of the implementation, for instance, without releasing the API. Okay, this could be a good approach. Or you can have some cool features like a new supported document type as a new module to your app without releasing the whole central applications. That's cool. And furthermore, if you have customers, for instance, who depends on your developments, then they will get fine-grained dependencies. I mean, they don't depend on your whole application, but probably just on one module containing the API, and they don't have to care about the rest of your application. And another advantage could be that you can split teams so that they work on different areas of your product, on different modules. But not everything are benefits. The conversion of an existing plugin project is a time-consuming task. Okay, it will take time to get through the whole process. It also requires re-education. So if you're used to work on Liferay on previous Liferay projects, it will take you time to find how to work with the new paradigms. Okay, it took us time in Liferay to do so. So it's the same. It will be the same for you. And the benefits are mainly visible in the mid and long term. Okay, so don't expect, because basically you spend a lot of time, you re-educate yourself, and at the end you get the same application. Okay, it runs on Liferay 7, which is good, but you have invested a lot of time and you get no new features, no new. Okay, so it's something you have to consider. So when should you convert? And when I mean convert is going farther than this first and simple adaptation process. Okay, if your application is very large and complex, or if you have a very large team and you think it's convenient to divide tasks, if your application is changing frequently, if it contains parts that could be reusable in other projects, or it has hopefully a long lifetime, so you expect this app to be on the market for very long years, and you want to add new features, then the recommendation could be convert it into a modular application. But if your app is very tied to the Portlet standards, or it uses a framework which is heavily tied to the Java EE programming model, it interacts directly and very tightly with the app server, or it has a very limited lifetime, I mean, you're just in a maintenance stage and you don't want to add any new features, and you are planning to replace this app with a new one in 1 year, then probably you don't need to convert. Adapting could be a good option in this case. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, I don't want to coerce. I don't want to tell you, let's all convert your apps to 7. I'm just giving you the options, and then it's up to you to decide what is best in your every case. Okay. In case you decide to go through this process, and it's good to know what it involves before you decide. Probably, let's see what you have to do to in this case to convert a monolithic Liferay plugin into a modular application that works on 7. Okay, so basically, what we call modules are the equivalent to plugins in previous versions. Okay, what we have is Java classes plus resources, could be ESPs or XMLs, whatever, and a manifest package as a jar file. This is basically what a module is. Typically, Liferay applications or Liferay consist on several modules. This is one of the advantages of the modularity. One containing the API, one containing the implementation of this API, one containing the web resources, and optionally, but recommendable, another one with tests. Okay. How do I create a modular project? Okay, so fortunately, we provide a lot of tools to do this. Okay, I will show you how to do this with the Liferay Developer Studio, but I will also show you some alternatives. Okay, basically, let me show you here. You will find under the project new module project. Okay. So here, you only have to choose a name for the whole project. I mean, the one containing our modules. Okay, this case could be Jukebox. And here, I'm going to select a service builder application. Okay. Then I click next. Can provide the name matching my this thing is OR. And this wizard, we just create. This is this project represents like the wrapping project, the Jukebox, and inside, if you inspect the actual directory architecture, this and these are inside this. Okay, but you have access to this in case you want to set up something for the whole project and not module level, okay? And with this wizard I just showed you, the API and implementation modules were just created, okay? So this is a way to show that starting with creating the scaffold of a modular application is quite easy. You can use this tool, or as an alternative, well, this is everything is explained on the slides, okay? So this is the result I just showed, and well, we created the API and the service. In case your application has some web resources, you should go through this step 2. So creating a new project. This time, instead of service builder project, you will create an MVC Portlet application. Okay, so as I said, it's very, very easy. Okay, of course, the hard part is to fill those projects with your logic. But you create here Jukebox web. Oh, sorry, not plugin, but new plugin project. And you create, oh, sorry, not plugin, but new module project. Web, you can select the WCM Portlet type. Again, you select a org, Liferay, Jukebox, and you're done. And with this, you will have the web module in case you need. Okay, this what we are using. I'm showing it to you in the context of Liferay Developer Studio, but behind the scenes, we're using Blade templates, which are the new SDK for Liferay. Basically, we have a template for every type of project you may want to create, like a service builder project or a MVC Portlet, or even projects for extensions. Julio showed yesterday how to extend the navigation. So we have templates for navigation extensions. Okay, so you will find you have a list here. Okay, when you create a new module project. This is the list with all the templates. I think there are more now because this is probably we have a new version of this list. But as you see, you can find templates for many types of projects. So that will add at least the first part of what you need, this modular structure. Okay. Well, it's everything, as I said, is explained. And the alternative, as I said, is you can get to the same point with a command line. Okay, so you just need to run this install Blade. The instructions are here. Okay, in this URL, and then you just use this very simple command line instruction. So create the first example I did with the Liferay Developer Studio will be replaced with this line. Blade create type service builder package is optional. The Jukebox package, and the MVC Portlet project will be Blade create MVC Portlet, blah blah blah. Okay, so as I said, we don't force you to use Liferay Developer Studio or Liferay IDE. We just want to offer many options, and this is another option we give you, the Blade templates. Okay, now we have the modular structure, but now come the challenge. Okay, I have to start extracting pieces of code from my original project and move them to the right places on my modular application. Okay, so and as I said, this is the most challenging part, and it will take a lot of time. So I will try to summarize the typical scenario. Okay, but it will change from one project to other. The service APIs and any other APIs you want to expose for other applications to consume them will be typically placed in the API module. Okay. The service implementation and any other model-related implementations, like we will see later. The data handlers, for instance, will be placed in the service module. And then any Portlet classes and implementations and resources go to the web module, okay? If, when possible, during this process, try to keep the same package names, okay? That will simplify the dependencies management, and it will reduce the number of changes you have to perform. But if it doesn't make sense, then you will probably have to change the package names and fix the imports. This graph represents visually what I'm talking about, okay? So this on the left is the legacy structure of a plugin, of a monolithic plugin application, okay? You have your web resources over there, you have the Java code here, okay? And there on the right is the structure of a modular library application, okay? So as I said, typically well, let me start with the APIs. Well, for instance, for the Service Builder APIs, they used to be here and in the service folder. That will go to the Jukebox API module. The Service Builder will do this for you if you use the right tools, either the Liferay Developer Studio or the Blade template. So basically, you can tell through configuration of this project, you can tell the Service Builder, okay, generate the API in this API module and generate the implementation in this service module, and that will help you a lot in this task. Okay, as I said, the implementations that we used to have here, not only the service implementation, but also any implementation of the asset renderer or the Portlet data handlers that we used to have here will go to the service module. Okay. And finally, the web resources, okay, will go to the web module. So not only in this case the HTML files, but this is a decision, okay? But I'm just giving you a recommendation, and I'm following what we use in Liferay. Any class that is related to is tightly related with the web resources. For instance, the asset renderer implementation, which may contain paths to a specific JSP files, should probably go to the web module too, because those are very tight, okay? If not, then the implementation will go to the service module. Okay, as I said, the Service Builder will do most of the work for you, at least for the Service Builder classes. Basically, you just have to move the existing service XML to the new module. I mean, if you use Service Builder, you will have a service XML with all your entities defined. Then a way to generate to regenerate all your services in the new modular application is simply to move the original file to the new location in the module, in the Jukebox service in this case, and then you run Service Builder, and automatically all the API will go to the Jukebox API, and all the implementation will go to the service implementation. And from that point, you have a modular Service Builder application. And I added here a hint. If you want to automatically create integration tests for your services built with Service Builder, you just have to add this option. Okay, so you have to set you have to edit. Oh, sorry. The build Gradle in your Jukebox service project, and add this test directory path. So then the Service Builder will create automatically the persistent test for your entities in this folder, okay? And in this case, this is automatically performed by the Blade templates. But this API defines in which project and in which folder the Service Builder has to generate the service APIs. You can run Service Builder with the Liferay Developer Studio again, or use the Blade template to run it. Okay. Okay. So in the materials you will find a second stage, which is the result of this modularization. Okay. So just to remember what we've done in this second step, we created with either with Liferay Developer Studio or with Blade templates the skeleton of our modular application that consists on an API module, a service module, and a web module. And we started moving the right elements to the right places. Okay, it's just a move operation on the two projects. Okay, and as part of this process, we have to probably to fix imports. We probably have, and that happened to us in Liferay, to break some code that was very dependent, so redefine dependencies. Okay, to redefine what our API is, what our implementation is. It's also a very important task. Okay, you have to think. Okay, what do I want? What do we really want to expose as an API? What I don't want to expose an API. So those decisions will take place during this process. And okay, so well, these are the instructions to import this second piece of this second material, this zip folder. It contains a modular project. So the way to import this is using the import Liferay module project and select the right path. Okay, I will skip this because I want to focus on the third step, which is the final step, and then I will show you the import for this case. Okay. Okay, so well, deployment is performed again with this add and remove option. Okay, in this case, you will find in the available, you will find not just one Jukebox Portlet app, but 3 Jukebox Portlet modules. You have to move them to the right on the panel, and you should also observe these lines in the server when you deploy them. Okay, so like module started, and okay, this shows that the modules were properly deployed. Okay, the difference between the deployment cycle we observed in the first stage, I mean in the adoption, and this step is very visible here. So we are, in this case, we are going through the whole OCI process. So we have many different stages, okay? And basically we installed, and if all dependencies in our modules are resolved, then they will be started. If not, they will remain as installed but not resolved. So there are a lot of documentation about this in our website in case you want to learn what the life cycle of modules in Liferay now we use OCI is. Okay. If you do this exercise at home, you should be able to deploy the modules on this zip in Liferay. But you will find some issues. Okay. You won't find the Jukebox Portlet anywhere. Okay. Why? Okay, so now we've just split all our classes into different modules, but since we moved to the new to this new modular approach, we also have to perform some other changes. Basically, if you remember, those who have used Liferay previously, we used to declare our Portlet classes, our data handler classes in XML files. Okay. Then Liferay knew which which class is responsible to render your Portlet and how. But now in Liferay 7, this has changed, and there are other means to declare this. So basically, since we haven't done this task yet, at this point your Portlet is not registered as a Portlet. Okay, this is something we have to change. This is part of this third step we have to go through. But how can you tell the Portlet is not register? Are there any means? So fortunately there are, and if you click here in the server, you will find an option which is Go Shell. Okay, this is an implementation of an OCI console just to see which bundles are installed. Okay, and LB is the command to list all the bundles. Okay. Oh well, sorry, I have to start another environment. But basically, you get here a list of all the modules which are installed, okay? And you can inspect the modules just to see what services they are declaring, okay? So let me show you here. So basically, as I said, LB lists all the bundles. Okay, in our case, we should find the 3 new bundles: the Jukebox API, Jukebox service, and Jukebox web. And if we want to inspect any of them, we just have to type bundle and the ID we get from this list. Okay. Well, this is what I've just shown. And if you do this, for instance, bundle and the ID of the module, you will get a list of all the services that this module is providing. And in this case, the word service should not be confused with the concept of service we use in Liferay. That's a service builder. Okay, service is what in OCI is called a microservice. It's just a function which is provided by a module. Okay, a module, like for instance our Jukebox web, can provide many services. For instance, it can provide a portlet. I mean, a piece of UI that can be drag and drop into a page. But it can also provide many other things like an asset renderer, an implementation for the export-import framework. Okay, we will get a list of all registered services here with this command. Okay, if we run this after this second stage, we will miss some things here. Okay, so we know we have some services, but we won't find, if you look here with grep or any tools, we won't find here any portlet service registered by the Jukebox web module. We have to expose these services so that OCI can process them, and they are finally finally our portlet is really available as a portlet in Liferay. So why do I split, or we split this second Y part of the upgrading process into smaller stages? Just because because what we explained earlier, the smaller the steps, even if they are not complete, the easier it is to detect any issues. Okay, so far, even if the portlet is not available, the services are. So you could, for instance, test the remote APIs just to see if they are working. Okay, so that's why I recommended to try to split the process in parts as small as possible. This is the cheat list for this second part. Okay, so what we've done in this part is we created the modular project with any tool, the Developer Studio Blade. We configured the runtime and build time dependencies. We use build service to generate, in case you're using build services, to generate the services on the right modules. We moved the API to the API module, the service-related implementation and resources to the service module, and the web-related stuff to the web module. We deployed, and again, we run tests. In this case, some tests will fail because the portlets, as I said, are not ready. We are aware of that. But some others, if we're testing, for instance, our remote API, they should be working because the service builder has updated everything, and those services, the Liferay service builder services, are properly registered at this point. Okay. So the references for this part are listed here. Basically, it's about modularizing and splitting monolithic apps into modules. And I also recommend taking a look to this, the instructions to use the Go shell. It will be your friend from now on, just to see what's going wrong with your modules, not only your own modules, but also with Liferay modules. Because everything now, this is a good news also for you as developers, everything now works the same. So no matter if it's a module provided by Liferay or a module developed by an external company, they are all now the same, which is good news because first you will find a lot of examples in the very Liferay repository. The web content module is now a module as the one I showed you, so you have a good reference of a very complex application there. And secondly, the tools we use and the procedures we use are very similar. Probably you remember there was like a gap between what we did in Liferay in the core and what you did as external modules. You didn't have, we had access to certain classes, you didn't, and it wasn't as easier to develop a plugin on top of Liferay as it was to develop something inside Liferay. But now that's changed, and everything is the same. So that, as I said, those are good news. And let me check the time. Okay, we have 10 minutes before the break. Let me just introduce this part, and then we will have the break and finish the rest of the workshop. Okay. So the third and final step, which is actually the second part of the componentization of the conversion process, is componentization. Okay. So what are components? We divided our app into modules, but inside those modules, as I said, we can have microservices. I mean, we can provide functions that can go from portlets to implementations of certain frameworks. Okay, so in Liferay, we've moved to a declarative service model, which means that we declare all these services with a component annotation. Okay, and so in this way, all these implementations are registered as OCI services. Okay. Then how can I face this or this last part of the process? So I think this will give you a very visual approach of what we are going to do. Previous to this to Liferay 7, everything about our portlet was defined in either the portlet XML, Liferay display XML, or Liferay portlet XML. From the very portlet class to any to the as a renderer class or the position of our portlet in the application list, everything was defined here. Okay, so now that's over, and we have to do this through this component annotation. So basically, this stage consists on taking all this information and placing it into those annotations. Okay. And the other part, and this really depends on what you're using in your project, is okay. What happens with hooks? You remember hooks were a type of plugin, of Liferay plugin, that was used to modify the Liferay as an application. So if you wanted to modify the doc bar, or you wanted to change the translation, you added a hook plugin and use different options provided by this type of plugin to customize almost anything in Liferay. This has changed too. It's also based on declarative services, meaning that we are not using the hook XML anymore or any special type of application. You will have to add modules that provide the right components to extend views, services, or languages. Okay, so basically you will have a class with a component annotation and using the right interface to provide an implementation of a new implementation of a service, or a panel app class, for instance, to add a new panel option in our menus. Okay, so as I said, things have changed. Okay. So another thing that you have to change is, okay, so far we are exposing our implementation as components, but it's also a good practice to consume the implementations by reference. You're probably used to the service util classes. When you have to consume, you have to create a new user, for instance, you will use the user local service util class. Okay, but those are static classes, and you are assuming that you have an implementation of that class somewhere that will do this work. Okay, but what we recommend now is to not to tie yourselves to these static classes, but to just consume any implementation of the interface by reference, and this provides two benefits. One is that you decouple the interface and the implementation. So with this, you will get any implementation of the journal articles local service interface. It could be the default one, but anyone could provide their own implementation as a service, as a component, and it could replace, if it has a higher rank, it could replace the default one. So that's a mechanism for you to provide alternatives to the implementation of services without changing the API. And secondly, it also helps to manage runtime dependencies. If your application depends on the web content services, and if the web content is not deployed in your server, previous to this, your app will fail. Okay, you will get an error, the class is not available. Now, your app will simply not be started because the dependencies are not resolved. So unless the web content is deployed and these dependencies are solved, your application will, as you remember the picture I saw previously, will go from the install status to the start status. Okay, so this gives you more security. Okay, so on what you depend on runtime. But it's just something what I explained here. Okay, so there are many benefits of this, but you have to change your mind. Okay, you have to, for instance, you have to stop using, or we recommend to stop using. They will work. Okay, the util classes. I would recommend to start using this all the model, this reference model, to get all these benefits. And let me check the time. We have 5 minutes. Okay, let me just show you this, and then you're free for the break. As a result, you have this third and last stage of the process. In this step, you will find the API service and web modules of the Jukebox Portlet with all these changes performed. I mean, everything has been adapted, modularized, and componentized, so that everything should now work. Okay, so the deployment is you can either redeploy or move things from the left side to the right side, okay? And if you check the console after this process, when you do this at home, this time you will find a lot of services provided by the web module. Because we declare them as components, we now have them in the console. Let me, okay. I just want to show you an example in the code, okay? So let me stop this. Okay. So probably you are familiar with this. Okay, this is how the Portlet XML in Liferay used to be. Okay, so one of the things you defined was the Portlet class, and you also defined the templates you use for the views. In the Liferay Portlet, you also define things like the CSS, the implementation for ADTs, export import, the index. Okay, this is the kind of stuff you used in Liferay 6.2 and previous versions to define the behavior of your applications. Okay, so I have them. Let me just open another workspace with the changes. And I'm just showing you the web part. Okay, so there are changes in order, but okay, sorry. And this is how your a Portlet class looks like now in Liferay 7. Okay, so all those properties I show you in the XML files have been moved to the component declaration of the Portlet. This is just an example of how things have changed. Okay, but if you can recognize all of them, so I mean the icon, the init params, the preferences. Okay, so basically we've moved here everything that affects the Portlet behavior itself. Okay, and for the rest, we added, we declared a component for every implementation. So you remember we had a line that was album indexer, which defined which class was responsible to index this entity. So now we have this here, and this is how we replaced the this here. So basically, with this, we replace that XML line by declaring that this is an indexer, and then Liferay will register this as an indexer of this entity, and every time I create a new one or remove a new one, the index will get updated. Okay, so it's a matter of replacing the properties either with the right properties in the component annotation of the portlet, or annotating the implementations with the right interface. Okay. So this is all described in the code I shared with you. Every change is a commit in the repository I shared. So and as I said, it's a time-consuming task, but in the end, you will get all the benefits we saw of the componentization. Okay. So. Let me see. Okay, let's just review the cheat list, and then you're free for the break. So this last part of the process, okay, let me just remember the two first steps. So we first adapted our API, our application with the minimum changes necessary to have it run on a Liferay DXP environment. Okay, that involved import fixing, dependency, solving dependencies with classes that are now in modules, and fixing API breaking changes with the help of either the breaking changes document or our tools. Okay. The second step consisted on splitting our logic into modules. Okay, and moving the right classes to right places. Okay, we had the help of the service builder and the blade templates to achieve this task. And finally, in order to have everything, all our implementations running properly on Liferay, we moved from the old XML configuration to the component annotation with the right preferences. Okay, and we also may have to replace the hooks extensions with the right components, and I gave you an example of this in the third stage. So if you've noticed, the Jukebox Project used a search facet, which was previously implemented with a hook plugin. Okay. Now instead of that, we have a search facet implementation, so an implementation of the search facet class, which is also declared as a component. That's the way in which we replace this hook. So instead of using a hook plugin with an XML and so on, we added an implementation of the right interface and provided the right web resources to get to the same point. Okay. All the references to get to this. To finish this third part are listed here. Okay, I recommend you to at least take a look to them and see what is useful for your case. For instance, it's not included in the Jukebox because we didn't overwrite any portal translation. But if that's your case, it's common in some projects. This link, for instance, describes how to override existing keys in Liferay portal, because it's also changed. It used to be achieved with a hook file, but not anymore. Now there are other means to achieve this. Okay. Again, we don't have time during the workshop to show everything, but and especially if it's impossible to cover all the use cases in your project. But what I want to tell you is that we have a lot of documents that will help you in this process. Okay? And if you find anything missing, please contact us. Okay, I think we can have the break now. As I said, please try to reduce it a little bit. What did we find here in 20 minutes? Okay, instead of 30. Okay, enjoy the break. Thank you.